Oh, hello. Welcome to the Stokastic.com NFL strategy show. Ownership edition, week 8. Very, very wild slate, to say the least. We'll get into all of it. I'm Dave Loughran at Lafay_D on the Twitters. Hit your boy up, LOUGHY_D. Joined by Neil Orfield at PlayerQ DFS on Twitter. Week 8, 11 games. Lot to get into. Fortunately, we have no Denver on this slate. Jags are off this slate. Chiefs are on a bye. There's another good team on a bye. I can't remember who they are. But all that's important now, Neil, is that we're breaking this down. How you feeling, man?
I'm feeling good. As I just tweeted, we get our stars back this week. We got the Rams back. We got the Eagles back. We got the Vikings back. We got the Bills back. You know, a lot of really important teams were off the slate last week. So happy to have them back in our lives.
Yeah, so am I. And I tell you, there are a couple. I mean, look, I actually enjoy slates where you have. I enjoy slates where every great team isn't on it. I think sometimes that can make it more interesting. But It's funny because last year, or even at the beginning of this year, we'd be like, "Oh, okay, the Bucs' potent offense isn't on it. All right, that doesn't matter. They're Thursday night football. That offense has been putrid." We thought Denver was going to be a good offense. They had, top 10 odds to be the highest scoring team in the league. They're off the board. The interesting one, though, is we don't have the Bengals. And
yeah, that's true.
The Bengals have been crushing lately. I mean, that team went from looking like they belonged nowhere near the Super Bowl through the first few weeks of the season, and now they're just running it up on opponents. So they're off. Bills are on Sunday Night Football, right?
That's true. So they're not on the slate. Are the Rams on the slate either?
Rams are on the slate, yeah.
Oh, yeah, they are. Okay.
And then Packers are another team where you would have gone, hey, that's a good football team, but their offense stinks right now. So, yeah, it's an interesting slate, and I think people are going to get funneled towards a few stacks, which I think are going to be really hard to get away from.
Yeah, they look really good. The best stacks look like some of the highest owned, so we're going to have to eat a little bit of chalk, but not everything's pretty flat. Once again, this week, we're looking through the ownership report. We don't have anybody who's going crazy high owned. So you can kind of play who you want to.
Yeah. And London, lucky them, Denver, Jacksonville.
Yeah. I mean, do they care? Do they know the difference?
Well, they're not Neanderthals, Neil. They're humans just like you and me.
I suppose that's true. But like they watch soccer, right? It's not a lot of scoring in soccer. Maybe they're okay with a low scoring game. Maybe that's more exciting for them.
I'm trying to think of like other sports that are more common to, Europe. What would we recognize a bad game?
I wouldn't recognize a bad. Probably they would say a bad soccer game is like 12-10. Whereas in my mind, that's an awesome soccer game. So, maybe we have different standards for what's great.
I don't know. I think there's a decent fan base out there for the NFL now. They've been doing a lot of marketing. The Jags play out there every single year. So I don't know. I really don't know. But I would assume that they know the difference between good football and bad football, or at least entertaining. And
that's probably true. That's probably true. I mean, they know what entertains them. So I get it. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk a little bit about football for week 8. I can't believe we're basically at the midway point of the season already.
Yeah, we are. We're at the midway point of the best ball season. I've been thinking, maybe I'll do some analysis, but then I keep coming back to nobody gives a shit about my best ball team. So I can't analyze my own teams. But maybe I'll just do it internally, do a little best ball analysis, because we are halfway through the best ball, first round.
Yeah, it's getting there. But we've got Week 7 review. As always, we got to at least touch on the Millie Maker winner. I don't think it was. I actually think it was a nice lineup. I'll read it off to you and you'll get your opinion on this. And I believe this guy, was he a solo? Last year, not a solo, sorry, but a single. Okay, no, he had 5 entries, okay. I believe. Last week was 1 entry. Just straight single entry into the Millie. Crazy things. But with this one, you had Joe Burrow, Austin Eckler, Ken Walker, Jamar Chase. So you got the pairing there, Burrow Chase, Mecole Hardman, Paris Campbell, Hayden Hurst. So there's your double stack. Josh Jacobs and Jets. Just a couple things here. One, couple really chalky guys. I get it. running back in the flex. So you go 3 running backs in this lineup. Jets chalky. Again, I get it. Paris Campbell coming off a big game, whatever you want to do with that. But the one thing that always stands out to me is I just love some of these cheap Kansas City options every week in large field tournaments, because outside of Kelsey, you never know who it's going to be.
Did Miko score? I feel like he scored 3 touchdowns. Maybe it was
he
just
had a
2,
rushing touchdown.
Yeah, he had 3 total touchdowns, right? That was just insanity. I actually played a good amount of Miko Hardman. I think that you're kind of understating the chalk here. The Jets 44%, Josh Jacobs 47%,
That's true.
Ken Walker 32%, Eckler 21%. Like there's so Burrow 17, Chase 5. Like there is a lot of chalk. And then we've got Miko at 2%, Paris Campbell at 3%, Hayden Hurst at 8%. So we do have a little bit off the beaten path kind of plays. But
wait, Hardman had 2 rushing touchdowns. Sorry, go
ahead.
rushing
and 1 passing touchdown.
And one receiving touchdown. Yeah. Go ahead.
So I'm and we don't have a run back here. So that was a mistake that I made in all of my Bengals stacks. I thought that this Atlanta offense would be able to score something, do something. And then of course we see Drake London has fewer than 2 fantasy points. I don't even know what Kyle Pitts had. He was in so many of my lineups. Couldn't even tell you how many fantasy points he had because it was brutal. The Atlanta run back was not necessary. Definitely hurt your lineups this week. So I required the Atlanta run back in my Cincinnati stacks. Maybe that's something that, I should think more about which teams I need to not be playing the run back. I thought Atlanta was going to be capable, but clearly wrong there.
It is funny because we've seen it a few times this season already, right? Cincinnati, Buffalo, and Pittsburgh. And I totally get not having a run back for that Buffalo-Pittsburgh game. There are a few of them where you just have monster favorites. Is it possible? Like, I still think with Buffalo, Green Bay, you probably would like to have a run back in a spot. Maybe I'm wrong.
If it were on the main slate, we would.
Right. I'm saying in general, like a game like that, you'd like to have a run back.
Which is what I saw this game is kind of being. I thought that Atlanta was a capable enough offense that you'd want to run back, but I guess it's not. I mean, is Green Bay even that much better than Atlanta right now? I say gleefully.
No, but they'll throw the ball.
That's true.
They're not running enough, in my opinion. Marcus Mariota attempted 13 passes in an 18-point loss.
Right. They were down the whole game. Like they didn't even change the game script one bit. I could not believe that. Like what are they thinking there? And
he attempted 14 passes in week 6. He attempted 19 in week 4. Let's be completely honest. Over the last month plus of the season, this team has lower passing volume by a long shot than the Chicago Bears.
Can I ask you something? What do you think about Drake London and Kyle Pitts as long-term assets for like dynasty leagues or unlimited keeper leagues? Because I'm in an unlimited keeper league where I keep trying to trade for Cooper Kupp and he keeps getting traded for Kyle Pitts and Drake London. And I keep trying to say, no, those are shitty players. Look at how bad they're doing. But I'm not sure that that's actually true. I think they're probably good long-term assets. The Falcons just need a quarterback that they're willing to throw the ball with.
I think they're great long-term assets personally. Yeah. Look, this team has done a good job finding wide receivers, first of all. Nobody's the Pittsburgh Steelers in that respect, and the wide receiver scouting department being able to just draft good ones all the time. But you're talking, just think over the last 10 years. Roddy White was a stud. Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley. I think Drake London's going to be fine. Plus, Marcus Mariota is not your long-term solution here at all.
No. And they're probably in the draft this year. They're going to draft a quarterback, wouldn't you think?
Deep draft for quarterbacks. Last year wasn't. You got Desmond Ridder, but that was just like a shot in the dark. So, my assumption is that they go quarterback. Long term, I think we should be. I think the outlook should be very positive for Drake London. Look, he was the top 15. Was he like a 10th pick or something?
Something like
I think he went right before Olave. I could be wrong here. You guys can correct me in chat. That's perfectly fine. But point is, these and Kyle Pitts was a very high draft pick. London was the 8th overall pick, first receiver off the board, I believe. So I feel fine about it. Plus, it's not like they haven't showed flashes, Neil. They're just not throwing the ball.
Yeah, I mean, he's just not getting targets. So that's nothing on Drake London. I guess it could be that he's not getting open, but most likely it's just the team is opting not to throw the ball.
All right, let's talk running backs. And hey, happy to have you guys with us. As always, whether you're joining after the NBA strategy show, you're listening, you're watching live, listening to the podcast live, listening after the fact, we welcome all of you. Hit the thumbs up, take a single second, atone for your sins in the event that you've yet to do so, and help us appease the YouTube overlords here. It helps us a lot. Otherwise, I wouldn't ask you. And if you're listening on podcasts, leave a rating and review. All that stuff helps us immensely. And tell your friends about it. Tell your friends about the Stokastic NFL strategy show and all that other stuff. So, hey, appreciate you guys. Let's dive into this. Running backs, Neil. I'm very much enamored with a few of these guys this week, but there's so many good options that it's going to be like, if you're not 150 maxer, it's going to be tough. You have Barkley, you have Derrick Henry against Houston. Jacobs has been a monster. Alvin Kamara is just another one of these guys that is so effective in both phases of the offense. When he starts scoring, the floodgates could open. Ken Walker against the Giants defense that on the ground has been terrible. And then even guys like Raheem Mostert at 5,900 against the terrible Lions defense. The list goes on and on and on this week.
Yeah, it does once again. And Josh Jacobs, 7,500. He's up $1,000 from last week. We still have positive leverage on Josh Jacobs. That's how involved he has been in this Raiders offense that should be able to move the ball. It really is a pretty deep week for running backs, which kind of just allows you to play whoever you want. Really, I mean, I still prefer, playing the ownership leverage game, but we don't have those spots where we have running backs that are, 40% owned, where you really have to think hard about, do I want to play this guy? The highest owned running back we have right now is Saquon Barkley at 21%. So really, you play whoever fits into your lineup with the stacks that you like. You play whichever running backs you like here.
I like a lot of them too.
Yeah,
I mean,
me too.
I'll tell you, I like Raheem Mostert a lot in this spot.
Yeah, we have 13% ownership. I mean, so 13. We have him a little bit over owned in the tools. 13% ownership, 8.5% optimal, 3.6% chance of booming. He's only 5,900. It's a pretty good spot for Raheem Mostert going up against this Lions defense that just gives up fantasy points week in, week out. I get it. The Dolphins have a 27.5 implied team total. What's not to love about 5,900 Raheem Mostert? Chase Edmonds clearly ain't it, right? So it looked like Raheem Mostert was a guy this week. I don't see any reason they're going to go away from Raheem Mostert. He's the better runner there. So I like it.
He played 71% of snaps last week. He had 20 total touches, 5 targets. He had a receiving touchdown. He's been targeted in the red zone as well. We saw that a couple of weeks ago against the Jets. That one that was originally ruled a touchdown called back, but still, like, he's getting these opportunities on the ground, through the air. I get why he would have a negative leverage score, but what I like about him, Neil, and let me put it to you this way. This is kind of what I like about Mostert is, even though 2 is not that expensive, a game stack here is not cheap at all, because you have Tyreek Hill, who's very expensive. Waddle is, mid-range price point. Amon-Ra St. Brown, if you're looking to run it back, he's expected to play. He's almost 7K. So let's say you're stacking other games. I just feel like Mostert's a great way to get exposure to the game with a 51.5 point total in the event that you're not stacking it and you don't have the money to pay for the Tyreek Hills and the Waddles and the Amon-Ra St. Browns in those lineups.
Yeah, immediate leverage on the highest owned quarterback. I believe we have 2 at 10.7%. That's the highest owned quarterback that we have. Of course, it's also the highest top stack odds, but you get immediate leverage right there going to Mostert. He's 1,500, and I'm just trying to look at the other options around him, like the alternatives to Raheem Mostert in his price range. There's nobody that really stands out to me as a play that I'd rather get to than Raheem Mostert. So he makes a lot of sense. The only real downside to Mostert is the ownership. Just he's looking a little bit over owned in our tools. We've got Mostert again at 13% ownership, 9% chance of being optimal. So some slight negative leverage there, but there's no obvious pivots that I'd rather get to than Mostert just on a first look here.
Where are you at on the high price chalk as far as prioritizing him? I asked Ben yesterday to prioritize the guys, Saquon Barkley price and up. I won't tell you where he put them just yet. Granted, we didn't have ownership, but I'll throw Jacobs in here too, because he's chalky. The Jacobs and the Henrys and the Barkleys, even the Alvin Kamaras in there, all of them pulling 17+% projected ownership right now. Where do you rank them?
Man, that's a tough question. It's hard for me not to really like Derrick Henry number 1. I think that I go to Henry first of all here. He's not the one with the most positive leverage here. He actually has pretty negative leverage. We have him at 20% projected ownership, 12% optimal. So some negative leverage there on Derrick Henry. The tools will tell you actually that Saquon Barkley is the better play. It's just a matchup play for me with Derrick Henry. I just really love that matchup against the Texans. Makes me kind of want to go there. But it's not like Saquon Barkley has a tough matchup against the Seahawks defense. So I guess it makes sense that he has not quite as negative leverage as Derrick Henry. I still think that I'm probably going to go Henry 1, Saquon 2. I mean, it should be Jacobs, right? Like just looking at it objectively, looking at our tools,
played really
Jacobs
well.
would be the highest. He's the one with the only one with positive leverage here. We've got Jacobs at 17.5% projected ownership, 20.5% optimal. So Jacobs is the clear best of these high end guys in the tools. So maybe I should just stop going with my instinct, go with the tools, and trust Jacobs as the number one of these high end guys. It's tough though. It's tough for me to get away from really liking Derrick Henry. Just looking at a glance against that Texans defense feels like a smash spot where he's going to score 3 touchdowns and have 120 yards. But gotta trust the tools. I guess I'll go with Jacobs 1, Henry 2, Barkley 3. Jonathan Taylor, it's not the best spot in the world against this Commanders defense. They're 4th against the rush. They're 29th against the pass though, in terms of DVOA. So they're 29th against the pass, 4th against the rush, which would suggest to me that they should be able to at least move the ball. Maybe Jonathan Taylor's not the first place they go. They've also got Sam Ehlinger in at quarterback. I don't really know how that affects things. Does he throw to the running back? I don't know much about Sam Ehlinger at this point in time. So it's hard for me to trust Jonathan Taylor. So I think that he is probably 4 behind Jacobs, Henry, Barkley. And then from there, man, Dalvin Cook, Christian McCaffrey. I don't really know what to make of Christian McCaffrey this week. I don't trust it yet. I don't think I'm going to be going to a ton of Christian McCaffrey. The Vikings do have a 26.25 implied team total against this Cardinals defense. They're better against the rush than against the pass, but again, should be able to move the ball. So I probably put Cook in there before McCaffrey. What are you thinking about Christian McCaffrey this week?
I don't know. I mean, Ben had mentioned yesterday he doesn't think there's any way they make him a bell cow back.
Like ever for the season?
Just in the sense that like this team has made use of many different running backs. I disagree. I think he will be. You know what my concern is that it's such a weird fit. This is not a team that historically, under Shanahan has done a lot of using the running backs out of the backfield as pass catchers. I don't know. I mean, yeah, he only played like 25% of snaps last week. He was targeted twice. 8,700. It's fine. I mean, if he's really going to be minimally owned, then I anticipate that to be the case. So do our projections. They have him at 5%. I do get it because Henry's so much more expensive and their team total is only like 21 points. But Christian McCaffrey is a clear boom bust option in this spot. I don't know what to make of it yet. Quite frankly, I don't think anyone knows what to make of it yet. And maybe later in the week, we'll get a little more of an update. He'd only been on the team for 2 days or whatever before playing. Right. So you have to assume that now he goes in and is very, very involved. So it is an interesting spot. He's finally on a good team.
Maybe we're overthinking it. You just see Christian McCaffrey at 0 ownership. Maybe you just play him. Although, we have him at 5%. So he's not at 0% ownership. It's also a tough spot against the Rams. Pretty good defense. It's really tough for me there's a part of me that thinks like another week, he was already somewhat involved. Like when he was playing last week, he was fairly involved, and the Niners, are a better offense than he has been on recently. So I'll probably play some Christian McCaffrey. I don't really know that ever. So I don't know that I'm going to be able to get to 10% plus of Christian McCaffrey, but maybe that'll change. Maybe throughout the week as more news comes out, maybe it'll maybe look more appealing to me. But right now, I don't trust it. But I mean, that's the thing. Neither does the field. Nobody totally trusts it, which is why you're getting Christian McCaffrey at so low ownership in this solid offense.
Justin said Shanahan gave Eli Mitchell every touch at one point. CMC is going to touch the ball a lot. Look, I agree. I mean, it wasn't even just Mitchell, right? Look, if he found the guy that he liked, they would get a lot of, even Jeff Wilson was getting, positive game scripts was getting a lot of opportunities. So yeah, I would expect McCaffrey to get the same, a lot of those, clear primary lead back. My only question now is how involved is he in the passing game? That's what I want to know.
Right.
So,
especially for DraftKings. That's extremely important.
oh, for sure. Yeah. Look, I'll go back to Ken Walker, 14%. I thought he'd be a lot more popular than that, even though his price came up. I really did think he'd be more popular than that. We talked about it on the First Look show yesterday. The Giants defense, they've done a good job of slowing teams in the fourth quarter. They're 6-1 straight up in the second half. So we've seen how they've produced late in games, but that run defense has been dreadful. No question.
It's a
Ben
great
pointed
spot.
it out yesterday. I was shocked to see that they had been that bad. So there's that. Again, Mostert, all these guys getting ownership. Some pivots that I'm looking at now. We talked about McCaffrey. A lot of this is contingent upon who is active or not. It's possible that Zeke sits. If that's the case, Tony Pollard's ownership is going to soar. There's no doubt about that, but just keep that in the back of your head. Tyler Algier, 3%. They don't want to throw the ball. I know it doesn't sound fun. This is not a particularly good offense. And Carolina, to their credit, their defense is not that bad, but you know, your best player is what? Burns. So you're going to probably try and limit your passing. If you're Atlanta, once again, they've thrown 27 times over the last 2 games. That's really, really low. I think Algier could have a 20 carry game in the right situation if we're neutral or positive game script, which is very much in play against the tanking Carolina team that just got rid of 2 of their top offensive players and their actual top offensive players. So Algier, and then Foreman on the other side if Chuba Hubbard's out. I don't think it's crazy to look to running backs in this game just because they're cheap.
How bad do you have to be 4.5 point dogs to the Falcons? Man, the Panthers are rough. Yeah, it's a great spot for Algier. We have him with some positive leverage. We have him at 2.9% projected ownership, 6% chance of being in the optimal lineup. He's only 5,400. As you said, this is should be a good spot for him against this Carolina defense. Atlanta should be playing with the lead. So yeah, Algier makes a ton of sense to me. You mentioned, I mean, you touched on Kenneth Walker, I guess, before we flip to the pivots, but I just want to agree with you that Kenneth Walker looks phenomenal. 14% ownership, 19% chance of being in the optimal lineup. He's only 6,500 against a terrible Giants defense. The Giants are 30th against the rush this year and 26th against the pass. So the Seahawks should have no problem moving the ball. So Kenneth Walker looks phenomenal. Yeah, Tyler Algier looks interesting as a pivot. As you said, Tony Pollard will look interesting. If Zeke is out, he'll look especially interesting, 6,100. But yeah, as you said, the ownership will come up. Obviously, the odds of being in the optimal will also go up with Tony Pollard. I don't know, how chalky do you think Tony Pollard will be against this Bears defense? He'll probably be pretty chalky, but I think it'll be warranted if Zeke is out.
I think it'll definitely be warranted, no doubt. But I don't know if it's just going to be uber chalk given how many good options there already are. That's what's interesting to me. But maybe what, 20%, 18%?
I'd probably be, I might be over that number. I don't want to say probably. I think there's a decent chance though that if he is 20% owned without Zeke in there, I would be above the field on Tony Pollard.
I think he'd be higher now that I look at it. We have Zeke at 16 right now.
Yeah,
which I think is too high. I don't want any Zeke.
And people 16%. Love Tony Pollard, like just like the general public loves Tony Pollard.
Or
at least among fantasy players, he just looks so much better than Zeke that people want to play him. If you get Zeke out of there, it's going to be like, okay, finally it's Pollard time. We're going to get to see Tony Pollard get 20 touches in the game. So I think people will get there with Tony Pollard. But if he is below 20% owned, maybe not everybody feels the same way we do as fantasy analysts and people who are, constantly thinking about fantasy. So maybe he won't be as high owned as we think. Another interesting spot is the Jets here. Because we've got, obviously they lost Breece Hall. They just traded for James Robinson. I think it might be a spot where we have to kind of wait on news, like what they're planning to do with their backfield. It's kind of hard to know. Is James Robinson going to be involved at all in his first game with the Jets? If not, Michael Carter is kind of interesting. We've got him at 2.2%.
Robinson's not even in the player pool.
Oh, is he not?
Not on DraftKings.
So he only, maybe they'll add him, but currently he only really affects what we do with Michael Carter. But the Patriots are 28th against the rush. So if James Robinson is not expected to be fully involved, which, he hasn't been there that long, maybe Michael Carter looks kind of interesting at fairly low ownership and a low price tag. We've got Carter at 5,900. We've got him currently projected for 2.2% ownership. So somebody we're going to have to at least think about. And I guess there's a potential pivot from Raheem Mostert, but obviously doesn't look, the spot isn't as good. And I don't know if the talent is as good as Raheem Mostert.
Yeah, I would have no problem with Carter there. I wouldn't have a problem with Foreman either if Hubbard sits. I mean,
Oh yeah.
I mean,
without
Foreman,
Hubbard.
Yeah. Look,
Falcons
that game's not going to be an enjoyable watch. It's probably not going to be high scoring either, but I mean, these guys are cheap and there's going to be some volume there. Look, when it boils down to it, Derrick Henry far better than Tyler Algier. I'm not saying that. Please don't mistake what I'm saying here. However, what I am actually saying is that when you're looking at just team totals on a slate like this, I'll tell you right now. So the implied total for the Tennessee Titans is, sorry, my computer was moving slow for some reason. That is 21.25, right? It's 23.25 for the Falcons.
Yeah, that's wild. I hadn't even thought about that, but that is a really good point. And since you just brought up, I also want to just touch on that game a little more because you just brought up Deontay Foreman. And now that I'm thinking about it, maybe they're interesting, even if both Hubbard and Deontay Foreman play. Maybe whoever is the starter is kind of interesting just because they are playing against this bad Falcons defense. And they're not, they only have an 18.75 implied team total, obviously a pretty terrible offense, but it's a bad offense versus bad defense. It's kind of a spot that I like to go to sometimes because the field, will play it one way and it's kind of hard to predict these bad offense versus bad defense spots. So maybe the Panthers running backs will be sort of interesting, even if they are both active, just because the defense is so bad.
Larry said, Laffy, I don't think you've mentioned the running back, a guy on the Eagles, Miles Sanders. I'll ask Neil about Miles Sanders. And Ross said, yeah, what about your boy Miles? I mean, they're 10.5-point favorites this week, and Sanders is finally, we can put that nonsense to bed that he's not the lead back in Philly. I mean, like if I've gotten one thing right with this guy is that he is the lead back. Now the lead goal line back is Jalen Hurts, but Sanders has 4 rushing touchdowns on the season. His 19 touches, 17, 29, 20, 16 over the last 5 games. So, I mean, it's there at 20 over the last 6. Actually, he just had that Minnesota game as well where he had 20. It's there. It's just, he's not exactly cheap anymore.
Yeah, the price tag has come up from where we're used to seeing Miles Sanders. He had been, in the 5,000 to 6,000 kind of range for forever. Now we've got him in the 6,600, 6,500. Where do we have him? 6,600. So the price has come up a little bit. We do have positive leverage on Sanders because the price comes up. The field doesn't want to pay 6,600 for Miles Sanders. We're getting him at 6.4% projected ownership, 7.1% chance of being in the optimal lineup. Looks pretty good. And just looking at it, from a base standpoint of he's on a team with a 27 implied team total and a 10.5-point spread. Usually you're going to want the running back from that team, especially when it's a talented running back, which Miles Sanders is a talented running back. The Steelers, a middling defense, 9th against the rush, 15th against the pass, but the Eagles just can move the ball on anybody, not afraid of the Steelers defense for sure. So Miles Sanders, actually is a really interesting play.
Anybody else who want to talk some wide receivers here?
I think we can move on to wide receivers.
All right, let's make it happen then. Hey, 3 free days of Stokastic Plus Platinum for those of you guys looking to dip your toes in the water free of charge. Everything on the site, as a matter of fact. I don't even think it's just football. It might just be football. Let me see here. Because I know if you're going to do 3 free days, you should really do it on a Thursday. And I'm just being honest with you guys, right? You do it on Thursday, you get Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So then you're getting, pretty current updates for the Sunday slate, and you're getting Thursday night football. That would be the way to do it. But it's 3 free days. Link is in the description. Tyler can throw it in the chat as well. Let me just make sure I'm right here, or I'm wrong, one or the other. Tyler, is it just football or is it everything? I don't know what that means.
I think it's just football from what I'm gathering
okay?
from the link.
Yeah, that would make sense. But still, everything from football ownership, player projections, top stack to all of our showdown content, all of our tools, the NFL lineup generator, which is very sick. It's a brand new tool. You guys will love that. I've been using it frequently. If you want to get 3 free days, just use the link. No charge, no strings attached. If you want to check all that out, first 3 days completely free over at Stokastic.com. Tyler threw the link in chat. It's in the description as well. All right, let's go to wide receivers here. So you have a lot of guys. I mean, really good options up top. You're talking Tyreek Hill, Justin Jefferson, Devontae Adams, and it makes sense to me because I look at this, Neil, and I go, I love that game stack with Miami, Detroit. I love that Minnesota, Arizona game stack. You got Hopkins at 12%, which if he's 12%, I am going to be way above the field on DeAndre Hopkins. You've got Devontae Adams in a game against New Orleans with one of the highest totals on the slate. 2 teams with solid enough defenses or offenses and far underperforming defenses. No surprise that these guys are pretty popular, but I still love them.
Me too. Just looking at all the wide receivers at the top, many of them actually have positive leverage, despite being pretty highly owned. They're still positive leverage spots. Cooper Kupp coming in at 8.3% projected ownership. We have him in the optimal 10.6% of the time. Justin Jefferson against this Arizona defense, one of the worst against the pass in the league. We've got him at 14% ownership, 19% chance of being optimal. Looks great there. Devontae Adams looks like he's going a little bit over-owned, 14% ownership, 9.4% optimal. He's Devontae Adams. You can play him any week. Tyreek Hill, again, that game environment is just one of the best you're going to find. The Dolphins with the 27.5 implied team total against this Lions defense that's bad against all facets of the offense. So Tyreek Hill looks phenomenal. 21.5% ownership, but 21% chance of being optimal to pretty neutral leverage there in terms of the boom bust tool. All of these guys look great. The first one that looks a little bit rough in terms of, I guess that's, I guess he's kind of close to like Devontae Adams in terms of leverage, but AJ Brown for your Eagles looks a little bit over-owned at 11%, 11.7% projected ownership, 6.8% chance of being optimal, a little bit over-owned. I'll probably still get to some AJ Brown, and my guess is I'm going to want to get to some Eagles stacks. DeAndre Hopkins. So you brought up DeAndre Hopkins as somebody that you're going to love getting above the field on, which makes sense to me because playing against this Vikings defense that is just not good. But he does look like he has some negative leverage, 12.4% projected ownership, 8.7% chance of being optimal. What is it that you love about Hopkins? Is it just that is it just a matchup here?
You name it. He should be above 8K, number one, in my opinion.
Yep.
He returned from suspension and all that nonsense that Cliff Kingsbury was talking. We knew out of the gate that was crazy. I had mentioned yesterday that my favorite player prop of the season was the over 59.5 yards on Hopkins. He played 92% of snaps in his return. 92% of snaps in his return. And why should that be surprising to anybody at this point? Christian Kirk is gone. And, as crazy as it may seem, because he was so fluky last year, Christian Kirk was still a huge part of that offense last year. He had huge blow-up weeks, right? Marquise Brown is out for at least a month.
Yeah.
So Hopkins had 14 targets in this last game. And let's take it a step further. Hopkins had 14 targets in a game that was never really at any point in jeopardy. Okay. At any point, the defensive touchdowns, the Andy Dalton picks, sure. New Orleans put up 34 points, but the Cardinals had a stranglehold on that game, essentially from start to finish. Well, outside of that long touchdown to Mahib, what's his name? Shahid.
I couldn't even tell you.
I always forget that name. Hold on. I know it rhymes.
Yeah.
His name is Rashid Shaheed.
Oh, I was close.
Rashid Shaheed.
Yeah. So he had that long touchdown on the opening drive. And then okay, to put it all together, Neil, Hopkins' long reception in that game was only 18 yards, but he still had 10 for 103 on 14 targets. Kyler Murray in a game where, like I said, they were dominating. Do you know how many times he threw the football?
No.
29 times. DeAndre Hopkins had a near 50% target share in his first game back of the season, coming off of a 6-game suspension. And now you're facing a Minnesota team whose secondary has been an absolute sieve this season. They're one of the worst pass defenses in football. They're allowing a higher yards per attempt average than any team in the league. Yes, that's why. That's a long way of saying I really like DeAndre Hopkins this week.
Yeah, so I pulled up his career stats just because my recollection was he was great 2 years ago, and then he was kind of middling last year in the 10 games that he played, and that looks right. So 2 years ago he was targeted 160 times. They made it easy for me, doing some easy math here. He was targeted 160 times in 16 games started. He was targeted 10 times per game 2 years ago. Last year he was only targeted 64 times in 10 games started. So that's 6.4 times per game. So it dropped significantly. So it's just a matter of, do we trust this new? So we have a sample size of 1 game so far this year. Do we trust that he's going to be targeted heavily this year? Going to get back to those 2 years ago numbers where it's 10 times per. Yeah, Hopkins.
Who else are you going to target?
Yeah, I know. And that's, I think that I'm on the same page as you, that I think that it's real, that he is going to be targeted 1 million times per game. And if he is going to be targeted 1 million times per game, we're going to love DeAndre Hopkins. So I think I'm with you. I think that I am in on Hopkins this week. But I think it's hard to reject just because we saw it was so different last year versus 2 years ago. And it's just a matter of, is he going to bounce back? Are they going to start targeting him all the time? And yeah, Christian Kirk is gone. Marquise Brown is out for a while. So it would make sense for them to target him pretty heavily. I think I'm with you here.
Yeah, last year was weird, no doubt, but I mean, I don't know. I'm honestly not reading into it all that much. I'm really not reading it into it all that much because I don't know, dude. He still had 8 touchdowns in that season. He only played what, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, like 12, 10 games.
10
or
games
something
last year. Yep.
I think we'll get back to the old Hopkins, and I'm not particularly worried about that.
Alex Wynn says, Kyler cost me so much money already this year. I don't know if I can do it again. Yeah, I hope that you've not been playing Kyler because I've recommended him every week, because I've been loving Kyler all year. And he's cost me, I mean, he's actually been fine but for the most part in the games that I've been high on Kyler, he's been good. He just hasn't been like you've needed Joe Burrow or Josh Allen. There's been another quarterback that you need. So he's hurt me in that sense. But I think that it's, you can play some Arizona stacks against this Vikings defense with DeAndre Hopkins back now.
Oh, I definitely will be.
Chronic Smith says Call of Duty comes out tomorrow. I did not factor in the Kyler after Call of Duty comes out narrative.
Oh, great. And they took out the homework, the study clause, right?
Yeah. No, it's not something that I factor. Maybe it is something that we should be factoring in, but that's not something I'm going to be factoring in here.
No, of course not. But I like the stacks here. I don't even know if it's insane to get a little Robbie Anderson in those stacks as well, like Hopkins, Robbie Anderson, because Robbie Anderson only needs a couple targets downfield to at least make things a little bit interesting in that game. I assume that he gets back. I would assume that he starts to play a decent amount of snaps and overtakes Greg Dortch. So that to me would be interesting. Rondell Moore's whatever. I mean, it's fine. Yeah, like a 2-yard average depth of target, which is what he did have a nice downfield catch. It was his only catch and 1 of 2 targets on the week. But like Zach Ertz, I think this game stack is offering us a lot to work with.
Yeah, I think it is too. There's all parts of this offense I like. I believe, and I don't have the stat in front of me, but I believe Arizona has also been a little bit better against wide receiver ones. So maybe that makes Adam Thielen even a little bit more attractive. It's not going to scare me off Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson can do it against any defense. So I'm not afraid of the Arizona defense for Justin Jefferson, but maybe it does make the double stack with Adam Thielen a little bit more interesting also. Do you think you're going to be playing full Arizona stacks? Are you just playing Hopkins with Viking stacks? Or are you going to play some full Arizona Hopkins with Kyler? And would it be a double stack for you? Just a single stack with Hopkins?
I'll definitely have some Arizona stacks. I mean, I'm not convinced that they're as bad as they've looked. I said the same thing about the Raiders last week, that team is way better than their record. I'm not saying the Cardinals are significantly better than the record, but when you look at the personnel and the actual talent on this team, they're better than a lot of other bad teams. So, I think you could see a lot of scoring here. I have no problem with the Hopkins Ertz type stack here or whatever. And I agree with you on Thielen as well. Not even just because the Cardinals have been good against wide receiver ones, and they have, although, Olave went for over 100 yards last week, and he was their clear wide receiver one. But also because when you're doing Kyler Hopkins stacks, it's tough to run that back with Justin Jefferson from a salary standpoint.
That is true. That gets a little bit expensive. So then maybe Thielen becomes a little bit more interesting. Just looking at the top stacks tool here, we've got Arizona. We have Kyler only at 3.7% projected ownership with 6.3% of chance of Arizona being the top stack. So we've got some positive leverage on that stack too.
I like it. Yeah, if you go Murray, Jefferson, Hopkins, you have 4,300 per player remaining.
Yeah, that uses a lot of salary quickly. I guess you go to a cheap defense, you can boost that up a bit for some of the players, but
cheap defense, maybe a cheap tight end. But if you wanted to go Ertz, he's not that cheap. So if you throw the Commanders in there, they're 2,600. And then you throw Ertz in there at say 5,100. You have 4,500 remaining for two running backs, a wide receiver, and a flex.
Yeah, it's tough this week. I mean,
that's why I might have some Robbie Anderson at 4K flat.
Yeah, that can make sense.
What do you make of some of these other top tier wide receivers who are getting ownership? I mean, Tyreek Hill's at 22%. Waddle isn't the same price by any stretch, but he's 13%. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 11%. So that, of course, pretty popular game stack, highest total of the week. How do you want to approach those games or the Saints game with Devontae Adams on the other, and on the other side, I don't really know how we can even talk about that one yet with Jarvis, Landry, and Thomas still questionable.
Yeah, it's a really tough game to talk about. Really tough game to really want to fully game stack anyway. That Saints defense, maybe not as good as it has been, but still a pretty middling defense. Where do we have them? We have the Saints. Actually, they're worse than I thought they were. 20th against the pass, 19th against the rush. So they are on the lower side of middling there for that Saints defense. Maybe makes the Raiders a little bit more interesting. And then the Raiders defense, 30th against the pass, 20th against the rush. So maybe that is a game stack that I have been overlooking as one that I should be thinking about a little bit more. We've got a 25.5 implied team total for the Raiders, 24 for the Saints. So it is expected to have some scoring in that game. Maybe we do need to look at that one. The obvious ones are the ones that we've been talking about. The ones that I've been thinking about for the most part have been Cardinals at Vikings. That's just a game environment that we love. And then, it's hard to not love this Dolphins at Lions stack in general. I mean, you can play either side of it, really. Obviously, I think the more popular stack, rightfully so, is going to be that Dolphin stack. It's just so easy to throw in Tua with Tyreek Hill, with Jalen Waddle, run it back with Amon-Ra St. Brown, or maybe Jamal Williams instead. Maybe you throw Jamal Williams in the run back. It's an interesting spot for sure to be playing some Dolphins. Or maybe we can learn from our past mistakes and just think about doing a Dolphin stack without having a Lions bring back, because Amon-Ra St. Brown is pretty expensive. And that's another game where if you play that full stack with Tua and Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, and then run it back with Amon-Ra St. Brown, you're not going to have any salary left over. So maybe that's one you consider doing without the Lions bring back. I don't know. Is that something you would think about doing, Lofty?
It's funny you mentioned that. First of all, I would really like to have St. Brown as a run back.
I know.
Just because Miami's secondary has been dreadful. But I was just tinkering around last night. We do these shows all week, so I like to at least see what some builds would look like and how practical they are. I was like, all right, let me build a Miami Detroit game stack with exactly what you just said: Tua, Hill, Waddle, St. Brown. 4,300 per player remaining.
Yeah,
on that.
It gets rough pretty quickly if you force that in there. You're gonna have to find some weird builds.
Let's see. Let's just say we throw Commanders in. I also wonder, how much does this stack funnel you to something very similar to other people?
That's also a concern, because then it's going to be, Marquise Goodwin is a guy that you can play with no DK Metcalf. He's relatively cheap. I don't know, Noah Brown. Who else do you really want to play that's cheap enough?
That's why
I'm saying
to go
to the cheap defense.
Maybe I leave the reservation and go with some Robbie Anderson or something. If Robbie Anderson plays 50% of snaps and, they're 4-point dogs, and I'm not saying it's a high probability play, obviously, but what if he does play 50, 60% of snaps now that he's acclimated with the team and Murray hits him with a couple deep targets.
Yeah.
It's doable. But okay, play the Commanders defense. Now let's do a little experiment here, Neil. Let's try this out.
All right, let's see what happens.
So we have about 4,800 remaining. This is Tua, Hill, St. Brown, Waddle, and Commanders defense. So now we need 2 running backs, a tight end, and a flex. You almost have to go cheap tight end here.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so here's my first question. Would you ever consider triple stacking with Trent Sherfield here? 3,000. That's one way to save some salary. I don't know. The triple stack is not something that I usually do. I allow it in my builds, but it's not something that I get in there a lot. But Trent Sherfield is only 3,000, 3.6% projected ownership. He might help you make it possible if you do want to try the triple stack there.
Yeah, I suppose it's not crazy. I guess when you have 2 receivers on the same team taking up so much salary, can you get there with a triple stack when you need those 2 high price guys to really pay off those price tags?
It's tough. You need like a 6 touchdown game where it's, Sherfield just gets 1 touchdown for 60 yards and maybe 3 catches. And then the other guys each have 2 touchdown games. It's asking a lot. It's certainly not the easiest path to a high scoring lineup.
Is it more practical to just go with 1 receiver from Miami, one of the top receivers from Miami? And then go with a Sherfield or like a Mike Gesicki or something. Yeah, it's not fun.
It's not fun at all. It's so much more fun to just throw in Waddle and Hill there.
If you go with a cheap tight end, let's just for the sake of this experiment here, let's just go Noah Fant or something. Maybe with Metcalf out, you get a little bit more volume. It gives you 5,400. So it's not impossible, but how many people are going to go with, Tyler Algier, and then are going to throw in like Ken Walker or something, and then you have 44 in the flex. It is doable. It's just it leads you to there's Marcus Goodwin or something. It leads you to very similar spots.
Yep, that's so we do have some people are pointing out in chat. We do have some interesting cheap options. Looks like Nico Collins is going to be out. So maybe Larry C says Chris Moore could potentially be viable. Raymond Diaz points out that Van Jefferson is 3K. As Van Jefferson looks like he's returning this week. So
Van Jefferson hasn't been good when he's been healthy the whole season.
That is true.
It is interesting, but you're banking on 2 targets basically. So I suppose you could say the same thing about Robbie Anderson, and Van Jefferson's cheaper. I get that.
He's in play.
Nico Collins being out. Sure. Chris Moore's cheap. Low total, very low implied total in that game for the Texans, but I don't know. There will be options. It's just you're going to have players in your lineup that you don't like.
Yeah, and I'm just going back to let me open up running backs because I don't think any of the Carolina running backs. I think they're both relatively expensive. They're not like 4K, right? They're let's see here.
Yeah, Chuba Hubbard has the ankle. I would expect him not to play. To be honest with you,
yeah.
Foreman I think is 53 if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I'm just pulling up, seeing if there's anybody who's really interesting at running back that's cheap. And there's no 4K running backs who look great, just, at a glance here. Yeah, it's tough.
The fam said, I'm on Russ St. Brown. Horrible advice. Xavier is covering him and hasn't allowed a touchdown all year. Horrible. Dude, if you're honestly looking at this as just one-on-one matchups, then you're not having success. How many times have we seen? Look, I've learned this from people that are significantly better than me, like some of the best players out there. They are far less concerned about cornerback
one-on-one
matchups,
yeah,
than
way overstated. But I gotta ask. This fam is the first person I've ever seen who has a check mark next to his name and a different color to his name. I've never seen this before. What does that mean? Is this guy official? Is this the word of God? I've never seen this.
I have no idea. I guess. I've seen the check mark before. I don't know who this is.
You have. Okay.
Let's see.
But yeah, I disagree with him in this case.
Yeah. Look, it's yeah. I know it's verified, Tyler, but he has pretty big following on this guy. What's he do? He does. What do you do, fam? Since you've been so nice in the chat. I don't know. Not sure. He's got a video with like 9.5 million views.
He says, sorry, just a big Dolphins fan. So yeah.
Hey, I get it, man. All good.
That's cool.
What I'm saying though is you see so many circumstances where you fade a guy based on cornerback matchup, and then he goes off and he has a big game. So you can watch any of my shows. I'm a big Xavier Howard fan, but this Miami defense in general has not been good. And I can't imagine that it's just going to be straight shadow coverage either.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so. Yeah, I mean, I guess the point we're trying to make, I mean, what we're saying really is that it's a tough one to do. Like ultimately, that's the conclusion we seem to be coming to, is it's really tough to throw Amon-Ra in those stacks with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. So it's we've been playing around with different ways to potentially do it, because it's obviously the game environment looks phenomenal. That's a stack that makes a lot of sense, but that's going to be tough to do. So, I mean, if you think that Amon-Ra is not going to be able to do it, then just leave him out and just play the Miami stack without Amon-Ra. Maybe you throw in one of these kind of secondary or tertiary, to steal a word from Lofty, wide receiver options from Detroit. We've got Josh Reynolds coming in, 3.8% projected ownership, 3.8% optimal. I guess Josh Reynolds is theoretically viable. I don't know. Who else would you even play from Detroit? Maybe Hawkinson?
Yeah, Reynolds is kind of expensive if you think about it.
I know. That's what I'm thinking. I was looking at that price tag. Doesn't actually look that great. Obviously, the matchup is great, though, against Miami.
Yeah, Hawkinson. Miami secondary has underperformed, though. I really thought that they would be extremely good this year. They haven't. The secondary, sorry, the fam, but their secondary just hasn't lived up to expectations. And like, sure, last week, they did a good job of shutting down the Pittsburgh Steelers passing attack, but you haven't really seen the same pass defense that you would have expected. Also, wasn't Xavier Howard on T. Higgins down that left sideline on Thursday Night Football where Higgins scored? Wasn't that Xavier Howard? I'm pretty sure it was. I'm pretty sure it was. Fact check me on that, fellas. Pretty sure that was Xavier Howard on T. Higgins on that Thursday Night Football game. Just came to my mind. Maybe not. I don't know. We can look it up. All right. Anybody else at wide receiver?
Good question. Oh, of course, Robert Woods looks great again. Burned us all last week. The tools are telling us to go right back to Robert Woods. 3.2% projected ownership, 12.8% optimal. I'm probably going to do it. I'm probably going to fall for that once again with Robert Woods. Garrett Wilson, only 4,200. Man, he hasn't been great recently. He had a couple great weeks early on and just has not been really involved lately. But at 4,200, I'll probably take some shots on Garrett Wilson. Just looking at kind of the cheaper end here, pretty interesting to me. Drake London has been so bad. It's really hard for me to want to go to that Falcons offense at all. But again, we see some positive leverage with Drake London. I'm scared of it, but talented player, 5,100, 9.3% projected ownership, 13.5% chance of being optimal. You could go there. Obviously, somebody brought this up in chat earlier. DK Metcalf out makes Tyler Lockett. Does it make Tyler Lockett better for you? It's tough for me sometimes because he's obviously going to be more of a focal point of the defense, but we do have Tyler Lockett looking pretty good. He's 6,500. 11.4% projected ownership, 17% chance of being optimal against this Giants defense, which is 26 against the pass. So maybe it doesn't matter if the defense is focused on him because they just can't stop anybody anyway. Tyler Lockett obviously looks pretty good. And then you can play some Marquise Goodwin if you want to stack that up. Yeah, these are a few of the guys who look interesting to me. Anybody else standing out to you?
No, I mean, Pete Carroll was pretty kind of opaque when it came to whether or not we were going to see DK Metcalf this week. I would assume he doesn't play, though.
Oh yeah, I don't think he's playing this week. My assumption is that he's out this week and that maybe he'll come back in a month or so. But I mean, Pete Carroll is just hard to read. Yeah,
I think it's very possible. Xavier Howard's allowed 2 touchdowns in coverage this year, but no, I'm sorry, 5. Xavier Howard's allowed 5 touchdowns in coverage this year.
Okay, 5. So that stat that he's not allowed any is just the
second most in the league behind AJ Terrell.
Yeah, so, with all due respect, the stat appears to be very wrong, very, very wrong.
And by the way, I'm not trying to shit talk here. It's important that we're looking at this, because Miami's secondary, if Xavier Howard was playing like the Xavier Howard we know, they'd be very good. Granted, they've dealt with some injuries as well, right? Like you have no Byron Jones is huge, but yeah, it's not been Xavier Howard's season. Anyway, unimportant. I'm just saying I have no problem with the Amon-Ra St. Brown run back for Miami.
Eric Tranny points out, news just dropped. Miami lost starting safety Brandon Jones for the season. I'm not going to pretend to know how much of an impact that makes. Do you have any idea? I mean, it helps. Anytime you're losing a starting safety, that helps the offense opposing it, but I can't tell you how much.
That's troublesome for sure.
Yeah. Wan'Dale Robinson, Marco Samparo just pointed out, only 4.7K. We've got Robinson at 2.6% projected ownership, 9.3% chance to be an optimal. So Wan'Dale Robinson looks pretty phenomenal. Obviously, another, we talked about the game environment. It's great for the Giants too. The Seahawks defense has been really bad. It's 19th against the pass. So Wan'Dale looks pretty interesting too.
All right. Let's talk about some tight ends here. This is a weird position. Hey, before we do, by the way, BetMGM, baby, they brought it back, the NBA promo. So finally, we can have some fun with this. If you haven't signed up there yet, $200 is yours when you deposit 10. Put it on any pregame money line. Just bet an NBA team to win. That's all you have to do. Bet them to win pregame, of course, before the game starts. Can't be a live bet. Sign up using the link in the description. Tyler will throw it in chat right now. Take $10. Put it in. Deposit $10. It's all more if you want. Only has to be $10. Bet any NBA game tonight, or if you're watching on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, whatever. Bet any NBA game, and it doesn't matter if your bet wins or loses. It's $200 on the other side of that. If your bet wins, you're still getting paid out. So I would recommend maybe take a slight dog here, so you get paid out. Plus, you get the 200 bonus that promo that they're giving you. It's among all sports books right now. This is the best promo out there, hands down, no doubt about it. They've taken it away. They've brought it back. They've taken it away. I don't know how long it's going to last. What I do know is your downside, if you get your 200 and lose everything on the worst streak of your life, you're down $10, or you go on a heater, you win a lot of money, and you have another book to play at where you can shop odds, where you have a bankroll that you didn't really need to do anything in order to get outside of deposit $10, put it on an NBA game and enjoy the sweat. All that needs to happen is a team hits a 3-pointer in any game. So it is the epitome of a no-brainer. It's a lock to hit. Take advantage of it. $10 into 200 over at BetMGM if you haven't done so yet. Free money in the DFS space doesn't come along like this anymore. So take advantage of it while these betting sites are trying to get your business. All right. Kyle Pitts, Neil, 10% on. How do you go back to Pitts? And I'm not saying you personally. This is kind of rhetorical.
You could be saying me though. It makes sense for you to be talking to me.
But they're not throwing the ball, and I can only imagine how much they're going to want to throw the ball as 4-point favorites. It's the first time in the season they've been favored.
Yeah, that's a good point. Man, but his price tag, they make it so tempting every week. Look at Kyle Pitts, this phenomenal player, 4,000 price tag now. Making it harder and harder to not play him. I'm still probably going to play some Kyle Pitts. I'm not going to feel comfortable about it. At least he's facing a bad defense, so those targets are more valuable playing against this Carolina defense. But I hear you. I've been saying it every week. I'm going to lose money playing Kyle Pitts again, and then I lose money playing Kyle Pitts again. It's one of these situations where what do they say? What's the quote about insanity?
It's repeating the same thing over and over.
The same thing over and over,
expecting different results.
Yeah, this is.
I
insanity.
know it's ingrained into me from all those NA meetings, Neil. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. So maybe this is insanity for me to go back and play some Kyle Pitts. I'm less and less comfortable with it. I'm not going to be playing. There have been weeks I've really smashed playing Pitts this season. I don't think I'm going to be doing that, but my guess, 10% projected ownership. I'm probably still going to be over it as long as our tools show him looking this good. Bad defense against Carolina once again. You're right though. They're just not throwing the ball. What it really is the upside here? Does he have the upside for 6 catches and 2 touchdowns? Maybe that's the upside, which would be enough.
Yeah. I mean, it's doable. It's just I'm surprised at this rate that Kyle. I get that he's cheap, but 4K, it's not like it's an inappropriate price point on him, right? It's not like I'm saying it's not in the sense that you go, wow, what a massive mispricing on Kyle Pitts. Not really. I'm looking at this. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. He's 16th just on this slate in fantasy points per game.
Yeah, he's been brutal. I mean, there's no way around it. The price tag, yeah, you're right. It's not an egregious price tag. This is just who he has been. It's maybe even too expensive. I mean, for who he has actually been, 4,000 is like he's never paid off his price tag. So maybe it's too expensive, but I mean, he obviously has the talent. If they do throw the ball, as long as he's getting a good enough target share in those, 15 passes this game, and he catches the ball, some of them, one of them, two of them for a touchdown, he could get there. It's just not a very high confidence play at this point. It just has not worked out much at all in 2 years now.
I will say this much though, and Tyler, we're on tight ends, not top stacks. I will say you're good. I'll say this much though. For those of you that are riding with Pitts, into the depths of hell, I hope you get paid off on it I hope it's not to a point where it crushes me, but I hope it helps you. How about that? Would you play Darren Waller if he's active?
Hadn't thought about Darren Waller, but probably. I mean, if he's active, he's 5,400, getting no ownership. One of the top tight ends in the league. The price tag is there, 5,400. But I mean, Darren Waller clearly has the upside, right? For a couple touchdowns, for 10 targets in a game. I think he has that upside even now with Devontae in town. So I'd probably play some Darren Waller. It's looks like a fine spot against the Saints defense. Again, has been much worse this year. They are 20th against the pass, so it's a fine spot. Raiders have a 25.5 implied team total. It's not a spot I'd want to go to if the field was getting there at 10%, but we have Darren Waller at virtually no ownership, so I think I can see myself getting there.
Saints always do a very good job of limiting tight ends,
Okay.
but I'm looking at what I'm saying. I'm looking at this. Cincinnati, you're talking Hayden Hurst. Seattle, you're talking Will Dissly and Noah Fant. Minnesota, Irv Smith, Ian Thomas, Carolina, Tampa Bay. I don't know who it was at that point in week 2 with all their injuries. Atlanta, Kyle Pitts, and that who knows at this point. So it's that can be such a misleading stat from year to year because if you could be a team that has to face Travis Kelce twice, and like if you're the Broncos and you have to face Kelce twice, you have to face Darren Waller twice. It definitely makes it a little skewed, but I think if Waller plays, I'd have a little bit of interest there. I like Ertz, 7%. Irv Smith in that game, if you're stacking it and you're looking for a cheap option, is fine. Like at this point, I look at so many of these options at tight end and go, hopefully I can just fit whoever it is into my game stacks. Like if it's Waller, Mike Gesicki, Zach Ertz, Hawkinson, Irv Smith, it might just come down to that for me in a lot of spots.
I just need to point out that Chronic Smith said, I like Myrick, and that was held for review. So I'm curious what the algorithm saw there that they needed to hold for review. Chronic Smith saying, I like Myrick. I thought that was funny. Yeah, there are a lot of
with Bellinger out with the fractured eye socket. But yeah, I don't know why they would hold that for review either.
I think it's probably the ICK. I don't know, maybe, but other people are saying the name and it's not holding it. I don't know, but Myrick looks kind of interesting. Getting 4% ownership currently. He should be the starting tight end for the Giants. Great game environment. I can see the Myrick play. Certainly interesting.
I do like that.
Larry C brought up earlier Noah Fant with DK Metcalf. Maybe looks a little bit more interesting. We've got Noah Fant at 6.9% projected ownership, 14% chance of being optimal. So Noah Fant, pretty interesting at 2,800. I would expect him to be more involved, wouldn't you? I think that he's probably going to have more opportunities with no DK presumably no DK this week. You
would think so. I mean, he's an athletic tight end. Yeah, they clearly haven't been super fond of him, but I'm not sure if you might have to this week. So we'll see. I really wanted to see with Myrick how many routes he ran last week because he played 60% of the snaps, which was very interesting, right? And then he ran, let's see, how many routes did he run? Because they're clearly, he ran for only 14 routes, but there's a good chance that they're also very limited as far as pass catchers go again this week. So he was targeted twice, ran 14 routes. But Bellinger was also on the field for, close to half of that game as well. So We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. I don't think it's crazy at 2,800. I don't like him as much as I would have liked, say a Cade Otton last week, but we'll see. Seattle's pass defense, not very good. Anyone else at tight end?
Irv Smith. Yeah, you brought up Irv Smith, so I'll second that one against this Miami defense. Another way you can go. We talked about Zach Ertz as an option in the Arizona stacks. Juwan Johnson, kind of interesting, more involved as a tight end now with Troutman out. I think you can play some Juwan Johnson. Of course, he's coming off the 2 touchdown game in prime time, but we still only got him at 4.5% projected ownership, 7% chance of being optimal. Gesicki you can play against this Vikings defense. Hawkinson, as we talked about, could be included in those game stacks with Detroit versus Miami. George Kittle, always sort of interesting. We've got him at 3% projected ownership, 4.6% chance of being optimal. I'll probably be playing. I think George Kittle is a guy that I'm going to be above the field on. I played a lot of George Kittle the past couple of weeks, and it's worked out fairly well. The Rams defense a little bit tougher, but I could see myself going there a little bit. I think we've largely covered the tight ends really need to, though.
Yeah, me too. Juwan Johnson, 41 routes run last week. Oof. 74% of snaps. That's it. That's pretty intense. I mean, only Chris Olave ran more routes than Johnson last week. So, of course, you want to see Thomas and Jarvis Landry out if you're going to do this, because the more they get healthy, the less Juwan Johnson is going to be involved as a pass catcher. But I would definitely look at that as a spot to monitor throughout the week. No doubt about that. Will Adam Troutman be back? There's a lot that goes into it, but definitely worth paying attention to for sure. All right. Top stacks. I think we did a good job of hitting on these throughout the show, Neil.
Yep.
But let's do it one more time. I think this is a valuable segment for anybody that's viewing. Before we do, though, shout out to Prize Picks. I don't know how long we're going to do it, but we're still giving away a free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum, $120 value, every single sport on our site. Every tool for every sport on our site is free when you sign up with the link in the description or the one in chat at Prize Picks. And over at Prize Picks, you get up to $100 first match deposit bonus. It's insane. You want to talk about insane deals. You got the BetMGM 10 to 200. Of course, you can't do that in PA, New York. You can't do it in Mississippi. Prize Picks is available in all non-legal betting states, though. You're getting the free month of Stokastic. So for those of you DFS players, massive. You're getting up to $100 first match deposit bonus. And you have a sick format. There's no sharks or optimizers, mass entries, none of that. Just daily prop-based contest, no juice on either side. Taking the over or under on props. Whether you want to mix together football, baseball, basketball, college sports, MMA, all into one lineup with 5 props. You hit all 5, you 10x. If you hit 4, you still 2x, unlike traditional parlays. You hit 3, you still make money back. Great way to sustain your bankroll, to make money. I know our boy Eric Lindquist loves playing on Prize Picks, especially given that he's out there in California.
Yeah, he's just crushing it.
Yeah, crushing it. Yeah, and it's available out there. He doesn't need the free month, but I mean, any of you guys that haven't signed a free month, I did. There's plenty of people that have been like, "Hey, I've wanted to sign up. I haven't had the money. I haven't been able to do it." Then maybe they have a big win and they sign up. They get the tools after a free month, or they just use the Prize Picks link when they sign up and deposit for the first time. They get the deposit bonus. You get the free month, and you get a great spot to play. So use the link, description, or in the chat. And after you do that, after you sign up, be sure to download the app as well. Sick platform, great format. And a lot comes along with you signing up, getting the free month and the deposit bonus. All right. Top stacks, and hit the thumbs up one more time. For those of you, almost 300 people still hanging out with us. If you haven't done so yet, we appreciate you. Neil, Miami, Vikings, Arizona, Raiders, New Orleans. Who am I missing? Detroit. That's
Philly.
More of a run back for me, but those first 5 are currently my favorite stacks. I know they're going to be popular, but those are my favorite teams to stack on this slate. What about you?
Yeah, so I'm trusting the top stacks tool, and I think that there were 5 obvious ones. A lot of them that you just hit on, but the 5 most obvious to me, just looking at positive leverage in the top stacks tool. Miami against Detroit, we have them at 11% ownership, 17% chance of being the top stack. Minnesota against Arizona, 7% projected ownership for the quarterbacks. I'm saying 14% chance of being the top stack. Philadelphia, we have 6% projected ownership for Hurts, 11% chance of being the top stack. The Rams, 3%. We didn't even really talk about the Rams much. I guess it's just because Cooper Kupp really helps them. And then, of course, Tyler Higbee, it's pretty condensed, but 3% projected ownership, 9% chance of being the top stack. And then Arizona, 4% projected ownership, 6% chance of being the top stack. These are the top 5 for me. If I were playing just one, I'm probably going to try to force that Miami stack. Maybe it'd be Minnesota. Probably one of those 2 for me.
Don't forget though, Las Vegas, basically identical top stack probability as Arizona as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Renfro's getting like 3% ownership. So that's why I'm kind of intrigued by that.
So the reason that I don't bring that one up in the same breath is that we have 3.7% ownership for Kyler, 9.1% for Derek Carr. So I don't like it as much from that sense, but maybe you just need to throw Darren Waller in, and there are different ways to make that stack work too. So that
yeah. Someone asked earlier, can you just go Goff over Tua to make those stacks a little cheaper for Miami and Detroit? You can, but the thing is that Tua is not expensive at all. Tua is not the reason that those are expensive. He's only 62. Goff's 5,500. That's kind of tough. But with Derek Carr, 5,900, of course you're paying for Devontae Adams. But once you get past Adams here, it is an interesting look where Renfro, I don't know if Waller plays, guys like Mac Hollins, Foster Moreau.
Would you play him if Darren Waller is active though?
Yeah. Oh, if he's active? No.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
What would you run back with?
From, Chris Olave is playing, right?
Yeah. Like if Thomas and Landry are out, I would definitely go Kamara too.
Yeah.
No doubt I would go Alvin Kamara here.
Yeah, for sure. So Swoop says Saints. It's really hard for me to do a Saints stack just because Andy Dalton is going to get vultured by Taysom Hill in the red zone so frequently. It's really hard to trust the Saints. Oh, Swoop now says is Winston started. I don't even know if Winston is starting, but same problem.
Yeah, Dennis Allen was tight-lipped on that when they asked him. I think it was yesterday. He basically said like they'll both be ready to go, but didn't say who it's going to be. I prefer Kamara more if Dalton is starting. I'll tell you that much.
Oh yeah, agreed. Just throws way more to the running back.
Dalton's targeted the shit out of Kamara since he came back in week 5.
Right.
He has 24 targets and 3. He's averaging 8 targets per game with Dalton this season.
And Winston didn't when he was the starting quarterback. So yeah, it's a huge difference for Kamara there.
Yeah. Like Winston, it's not as if he's not going to target him at all, but I don't know if those 9-10 target games are as nearly as close to being in play as if it's in the event that it's with Dalton. So, or Winston over Dalton. Any other? All right. So are there any, this is what we'll close the show with, and appreciate you guys hanging with us as always. This is a fun show to do every week. Are there any under the radar stacks? Because there's some really obvious ones, but are there any that might kind of pop to you?
I wouldn't say that there are any. Okay. You give yours first, and we'll see if it's one that like there's some that looks sort of interesting to me, but they all have, obviously the rest basically have negative leverage. Like outside of the ones we've talked about, they all have some negative leverage, but still maybe I'll play in some spots. But who is it that you like here?
Rams Niners. And you can look at the Niners and go, man, look how bad that rating is in the top stack tool. But I mean, a Debo run back or an IU, there's so many viable run back options. The problem with that is, how do you fit it all? Like how do you go Cooper, Kupp, and McCaffrey? I don't know how you do that. Even Cooper, Kupp, Debo, I suppose Higbee's not expensive, so you could make that work. Like the second stack piece for the Rams is going to be cheap.
Yeah.
If you can make it work, though, wouldn't be shocking to see this game have some points at all.
Yeah. So I mean, the Ram side of it is one that I brought up just as it is one of the 5 that has massive positive leverage on the Ram side. We've got 2.7% projected ownership for Stafford, 8.9% chance of being the top stack. But then I guess the San Francisco side might be the one that goes a little bit under-owned. Maybe they move the ball a little bit easier with Christian McCaffrey. Maybe it opens up some of the receivers a little bit more. So maybe that's an under-owned stack. Maybe you could play some Jimmy G, and he's cheaper. Actually, I don't know what his price tag is, but
and that Rams secondary has not been very good.
Yeah, so you could potentially play that Rams. One that I was going to bring up, but it has kind of massive negative leverage, is the Giants stack. Daniel Jones does run a little bit. We talked about Wandale Moore being kind of interesting. Some people like Myrick. It's going a little bit over-owned in the tools. 5% ownership, 2% chance of being optimal. But I think that you could play a Daniel Jones stack. You could even play a double stack of the Giants. It's not going hugely owned, negative leverage, but still not a ton of ownership there. So maybe that's one that you could consider playing here and there. Not a high confidence one for me, given the ownership.
All right, Neil, what do you got coming up this week? You got On the Contrary Friday, right?
I do. I have On the Contrary on Friday with Kyle Dvorak coming back for On the Contrary this
nice.
Friday.
We like Kyle around.
I haven't done any shows with Kyle. I talk with him some on Twitter, but I've never done any shows with him. So that'll be fun. I've got my usual Thursday is my I'm doing Thursday night football stuff all day. I'm going to be writing an article, doing a couple videos on demand on how I will be setting up my fantasy cruncher for the slate. And then, of course, live before lock for Thursday night football. So that's what I've got tomorrow. Friday, yeah, we don't no high stakes this week, just On the Contrary on Friday. And then, of course, the Saturday strategy show with Greg.
Beautiful. Follow Neil, Player Q DFS, me at Lafay_D, LOUGHY_D. Shout out to Tyler for producing this one. We'll catch you back here tomorrow. Marathon matchup show, baby, and all the showdown content you can stomach. Peace.